If you're working with Azure or any other cloud provider, the very least essential piece of requirement you have is the implementation of the security. How do you make protected your services? How do you protect your services which you are hosting on the cloud? How do you protect your data? So data protection and the security are the key aspect. Today we are going to discuss the service endpoint and the private services or the private link, which is the new offering from Microsoft Azure to provide a more secure connections between your network, your on-premise network, cloud network, and the platform as a service component or the marketplace services. So how do you connect securely and privately to these services? Well, look at that. First of all, let's understand what is the need and where do I get the requirement where these services fits into the picture. So first of all, let's understand I have got the virtual network. I have in that virtual network I have hosted couple of services which is hosted on the private network, right? And I have got the on-premise network which is connected. My on-premise network is connected to Azure virtual network through the express route private peering, right? Now my organization's requirement is to make this connection securely. Any service connection between source to destination, it has to be secure and private, and I have clear instruction received from the client that I should not use the private IP address as much as possible. So when I started implementing that, our focus was to implement or to provide a services wherein we host the services on the private network with the private IP addresses. But there are some cases wherein you do not have option initially and you require to connect to some of the services on the public IP addresses. For example, if you want to connect to the key vault, storage account, or the SQL server as in database, Azure SQL server, then you do not have any choice connecting to those services rather than connecting over the public IP address, because these are the private services and these are hosted by the Microsoft Azure on a public IP address. Though it is secure because it is been hosted under the Microsoft Azure region on their own database center. So there are so many security guidelines which has been followed by Microsoft Azure, but still they are hosted on public IP address, right? So how do you make sure that you are, going through these kind of a security resolutions wherein you still follow your rule of thumb of having the private connection and the secure connection? So Microsoft keep on evolving their journey of making the customer satisfaction and moving towards the making the secure and private connection. So I have the Azure fundamental resource group. Here in this case, I have got the virtual network. It has got the default subnet, and here in this I have the virtual machine which has got the public IP address, and I can, if you look at the inbound IP rules, I can RDP to this network, this service. All good, right? And now I want to connect to the storage account. So by default, if you host the storage account without having any enforced security requirement, your storage account by default gets the allowed access to all network. For example, by default, I will get an access to all network, something like that. This means that if I have a valid credential, which is the right access key or the shared SAS key, then I should be able to connect to the storage account, which looks good. But what if your storage account credentials are compromised? Then still you have got an option wherein your storage account has been connected uh, from outside your network, which is not something you want. So in that case, Microsoft proposed to choose the configuration to allow connecting to these PaaS services or the selected networks. So By doing that, what you can do is you can basically add the a list of IP address range. For example, in this case, what I've done is I've added the IP address range of my local network, and once I've added that, let's say if I delete that for now, for example, just for the demonstration, and I'm trying to connect to the same storage account. This is the same storage account I've just used from my local machine, and if I will try, I get an unauthorized access, right? This is what the error message I'm getting it, because it says that it is going to be allowed from the selected IP address range, and I haven't specified which IP address or which network it is supposed to allow connection from. So for example, I'll say, okay, this is allow connection from my public machine, or from this public IP address, which is the IP address of my network, my current network where I'm demonstrating this particular video, right? So once I do that, I should be able to connect to the storage account, which proves that okay, you got some level of security wherein you are saying, okay, yes, you can see that I'm able to connect to that. Now this proves that you have got some level of security wherein you are adding the source IP address, which is the source public IP address, to the destination service, which is my storage account, which is fine up to some level, but still we are not we have not fully implemented our rule of thumb, which is no publicly available IP address or publicly available service should be allowed. So what we should do in this case, so the next option we can go ahead is we can go ahead and choose the existing network, and here in this case what we can do is I can go ahead and select the network option. Before I do that, let me go ahead and just make sure that the endpoints are there. So just to make it work, what do I need to do? So I'll go ahead and add the existing network. This is the only network I got. I'm selecting that, and if you can see that it says that the following network does not have the service endpoint enabled, and for Microsoft Azure, enabling this might take 15 minutes to complete, and after starting the operation, safe is to leave return if you wish to. It means that once I'm going to add the existing virtual network, what it will do is it will add the service endpoint connections on my virtual network. So let me go ahead and add the existing networks, and we'll see that what it does. So if you check that, I was just checking the same thing, that whether it has got the virtual the network the service endpoint connection on the network or not. So if you see, it's trying to update the service endpoint here. So similar to that, like I have added the storage account service endpoint, it has got number of other options as well. So if you are trying to communicate any other services from the network to any other pass service, then you have the option to add that particular service endpoint. So in this case, what will happen is the communication which is going from the source IP to the destination IP, it will go via the Microsoft backbone internet connection. So there is a private internet connection between your source service, between your private network, virtual private network, to the destination service, which is hosted on the Microsoft hosted region, which is, for example, if this is my storage account which is hosted on Microsoft Azure as a PaaS service, so any communication from my virtual machine to the storage account, it will go via the Microsoft tunnel. I'm just waiting for this to be completed. This might take a while, so I'll pause the video for a while, and then I'll come back once it is updated. This took a while to complete the update, and now you can see that my storage account has got the network connection, and inside the network, if I go back to the network, and if you check the service endpoint connection, you have got the service endpoint. Just to demonstrate you, I have got some other options as well, wherein I can specify the service endpoints, like I'm specifying for the storage account. Let's test the connection now. I'll go back to the virtual machine, and if I refresh now, let's see if I'm able to connect to it. This proves that having the service endpoint enablement on this storage account, I am able to connect to the storage account from my virtual machine. So this is giving me an ability wherein I'm connecting from the private IP address or the from my private virtual network to the PaaS services via the Microsoft Azure backbone network routing. Okay, now you have resolved one problem wherein you have got the source as in private IP address, but let's check if your destination is on the private IP address or not. So to do that, what I'll do is I'll just perform the NS lookup, which I did previously as well. As you can see, my storage account is pointing to the public IP address, which is kind of against the rule of thumb or the company's policy. Also, having the use of the storage account with the virtual network configuration using the service endpoint, you would not be able to connect to the virtual network which is created onto the different region. Just to demonstrate you, I'll go to the different storage account. For example, I have one more storage account configuration just for this demonstration. Storage not working, and this storage account is specifically created on the central India. And now if I go to the firewall and network, choose select network, go to this existing node, and you can see that I'm not able to find any network here because my storage account is created onto central India, whereas the virtual network is created in the West Europe. This proves that the configuration of or protecting your PaaS services from your network only works if your source and the target services both are on the same network. If your source is from route 1 and destination is from route 2 or the net or from the region 1 or region 2, then it will not work. So this is what the limitation we got. Okay, in this video we have seen how we can connect to the PaaS service or the platform as a service from your virtual private network with the help of firewall rules and settings or with the help of service endpoints, right? We've also seen some of the merits and demerits of the uses of service endpoint. In the next video, we are going to check how we can leverage the use of private links. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.